Welcome back to Operation Evil, where curiosity meets crime. I don't know. We're trying something different. Is that kind of what you were thinking? We want to be
Yeah.
fun in the beginning before we become really
Yeah.
serious. So,
Yeah.
should I try it again for fun? Okay.
Or whatever you want to say.
Welcome back to Operation Evil, where curiosity meets crime. Is that good? No?
Yeah.
Or you got something? I mean, Heather
No,
made that up. It's pretty good.
I was trying to think of something silly.
If you guys think of something, let us know. I mean, we'll try out
Yeah.
so many things. It makes me think of like Ghost Adventures when they're like,
Yeah.
I never believed in ghosts until I became face to face with one or whatever they do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, anyways, I'm your host, Nyoka, and as you can hear, Heather is joining us again. She has become a regular co-host and so helpful to me. Oh my God, she's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And we
Anytime.
upgraded her. She's got a microphone and all the good things coming. So it's going to be,
Semi-professional.
yes, it's going to be so good. So thank you guys for listening, for coming back, for telling friends about us, for all the things. And as always, listener discretion is advised.
Absolutely.
Do you have a title for this one? This is going to be an Easter episode since that's right around the corner by the time this releases.
Mm-hmm. This is just the Easter Massacre.
Simple. I like it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this is another interesting case from the law and mental health point of view. You know how we like to go down those rabbit holes some days.
Absolutely.
So, as we know, in 1975, things were not as they are now. And even now, our mental health system is not all it could be. Right. So, with that said, let's take a listen to this case about Mr. James Urban Rupert. And this also happens, Nayoka, in kind of in our backyard.
Oh.
And it's a story out of Hamilton, Ohio.
Oh, yeah, that is pretty close.
So, yeah, so pretty close to Mr. Vance's hometown as well, our vice president. So at 9:30 p.m., okay, so that time is significant. So remember that 9:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday, March 30th, 1975, in Hamilton, Ohio, the local police responded to a call about a person shot. A person shot.
Okay.
Officers arrived and looked into the dark house and noticed that there was still Easter dinner on the table, along with brightly colored Easter eggs laying across the room. And they had saw the unthinkable, dead bodies, plural, on the floor. As they entered the residence, they were sadly would find 11, yes, 11 dead bodies in all covered in blood.
Ooh, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, they responded to a call of a person shot.
Huh.
So, all right. So James Urban Rupert, he was born on March 29th, 1934 in Wapakoneta, Ohio. I think that's how you say that. It's up almost to Lima, Ohio. And he was the youngest of two boys. His family lived in a quiet household and a quiet Midwestern life, and they moved to Hamilton just north of Cincinnati. When he was young, his parents, Leonard and Charity, who they called Billy, struggled to make ends meet, as many families did during that time. It was the Depression. When James was born, things only got worse with the family. The father, Leonard, lost his job, and he turned to alcohol. He was already hard on the kids. He was a strict disciplinarian, and of course, alcohol made him all the worse. This left the mom, Billy, as the main caregiver, but she was emotionally and physically distant, especially from James. She often called him useless, a failure, stupid, all beginning at a young age.
Ooh,
His
that's
father,
not good. That's what makes
no,
serial killers, people.
it does, or lunatics, whatever you want to call them.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. That's your job. So she often called him useless. Yeah. So His father told him he would never amount to anything. He would never have a job, and he would never be able to live on his own. So make note of that. I know it might sound dark, but as we know, those key phrases are important, and we'll come back to that. So James was always a small child for his age. He was sickly, he was scrawny, because he was diagnosed with asthma when he was 2 years old. So if you live in our area, you know that having asthma in this area is not an easy task. We have lots of humidity. We have lots of pollen. It all just kind of hangs in this Ohio Valley.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. So had a hard time in our humid springs and our wet winters. And with his asthma, he was kept inside most of the time. He also had, the family also raised chickens, and the dust and the feathers often triggered his asthmatic attacks. So, despite this and knowing this, his father still sent him out as his job and chore to clean the coop,
Oh my gosh.
quickly. Yeah.
They trying to kill him? What is going on?
It kind of sounds that way, does it not? All right. So, because he was sick a lot too, he also missed a lot of school. Of course, it wasn't really his fault. And no one asks for asthma. We don't ask to be born with asthma or any illness for that matter. But James's parents began to become even more disappointed in him. They continued with the verbal abuse. Although James was intelligent, fairly, he had a normal average IQ, but he was gifted in working with his hands and mechanical things, taking things apart and putting them back together. But as we said, he was small and sickly and pretty socially awkward since he didn't get to go to school quite as much, which made him an easy target for the bullies. So it seemed that nothing James ever did or achieved seemed to measure up to his older brother, Leonard Jr. They were complete opposites in all aspects. Their mom, Billy, made no effort to hide the fact that Leonard was her favorite. Often, she would say to James, "Why can't you be more like Leonard?" Right?
That is amazing.
That's my rendition of Miss Rupert. All right, the family, they were devout, strict Catholics, and they made mass every day, and there was no room for argument about it in the house. You went, you didn't complain, and you went every day. So when James was 12, his father died from tuberculosis, and this made Leonard Jr. the man of the house. So, of course, mom set even higher expectations for Leonard Jr., but not for James, because nothing he did was good enough. So he was often made to clean the house, and of course, he would miss a spot, the little spot. You gotta remember, he's still young, and his mother would call him out and shame him and tell him he was lazy. So later, him and his brother attended Hamilton Catholic High School. And if James got a B, he was beaten and punished for being stupid.
Wow, for a B?
A B. This is what I said. Yeah. So the high school was small, and of course, everyone knew everyone. Everyone knew James and his awkward tendencies, and he was the kid that sat alone at lunch, never got picked for the team, and was never in the quote unquote in crowd. Even his brother, Leonard Jr., kept his distance from him at school. He didn't stick up for him at fights, and he didn't help him when the bullies were bullying him, like most brothers should. Leonard Jr. really didn't want to be associated with his brother in any way. So later in life, James stated that after his father passed away, his mother became physically abusive. She encouraged Leonard Jr. To participate when she beat him. So she involved his older brother in his quote unquote beatings. Yeah. So Billy, or her real name is Charity, the mother, believed his brother beating him would teach him a bigger lesson than if she herself did so. So once James threw a dinner plate on the floor, and they drug him to the basement and beat him with a hose. So James made several attempts to run away in his life, but each time he returned and he would be even more depressed. seemingly so. I mean, I'd be pretty depressed if all that happened to me when I was at home was getting beat up and
Yeah.
put down. And
To have your brother beat on you too.
yeah, yes, exactly. So when James turned 18, he was hospitalized for spinal meningitis. And this is a no joke illness because my father had this and it was very, very severe. We could have a whole nother show on that if you want to about illness. But anyway, so he spent 3 weeks in the hospital. And when he finally recovered, he was weak and even more miserable. During his recovery, his mother was constantly complaining that she wished that he had never been born. So he began to think about suicide. But James graduated high school in Hamilton in 1952, and he went on to go to Xavier for a while and UC, University of Cincinnati, to study electrical engineering. He was an average student, but after 2 years, he dropped out. He did get a job at GE, General Electric, which, as we know, is a pretty big place around here in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
And
that would have been a good job, right?
it was, yeah. We
Yeah,
have several friends who had retired from there back in the day. So yes, that was a very almost as good as like if you had a job with P&G here.
right.
There's big staples in this area. So he made decent money at the time, and he moved out on his own. But sadly, his job didn't last long, and he had to move home. He got a temporary job as a draftsman and traveled. So during this time, he developed the habit of visiting the library to read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. He was mostly interested in the financial sections. When he was making his own money, he placed money into investments in stocks, which you would think would be a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So then he would also visit the bank on a regular basis to check on his stocks and investments. When he turned 30 years old, his traveling draftsman work dissipated and he was back living with his mother once again. He also began to drink heavily himself, just like his father. Some of his investments went south, turned sour, and he lost everything he had in the bank. James did, however, have another hobby that kept him busy. Any guesses?
Skinning cats.
That's hilarious. It's not hilarious. I'm sorry. That's a habit.
We're the making of a serial killer here.
Yeah. He did not do
Cut
anything to
grass.
animals. He didn't do anything to animals.
Shoot guns.
Yay! Ding ding, you're the winner.
Woo!
So yes, he was very into collecting guns and shooting going target shooting on a regular basis. He liked to practice his precision shots. And he began to grow a collection of firearms. He would spend his paychecks on guns and alcohol. Woo, almost like the Wild West.
Yeah. What
So
a combination.
Right?
Wow.
Yes. So I can see psychology wise here why someone who is skinny and scrawny would want the comfort of knowing how to shoot guns and handle guns and have guns to make him feel superior after all this inferiority that he has felt most of his life. That's just
And he has to keep going home to his mom that thinks he's worthless anyway.
Right. That's my unprofessional professional opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he did lose everything, but he got into guns. He began to grow his collection, like I said, and then he needed to start taking out loans. He took these loans out from his mom and his brother. And that was quickly used up at the bar. So as soon as he would borrow 10, 20 bucks, he would drink it up. So there's this bar, there used to be this bar, and until 2018, it still stood in Hamilton. And it did have different names, but at the time it was called the 19th Hole. And the bar had apparently had, like I said, had several names over the years. Disclaimer, it had to be torn down because of all the violence that happened there.
Oh.
Yeah, that's kind of what they were saying. It was a bad place after a while. So of course, over the time, he just kept borrowing more money and more money from his parents. And with each new quote unquote loan from not his parents, sorry, his mom and his brother, he became even more bitter. Of course, he blames his mom and his dad for his sickness, for the position he was in, but most of all, he blamed his brother. James really resented Leonard, his brother, not only for the way that he was, but James believed his brother stole the one and only shot at happiness he had. Uh,
Wow.
a girl.
Uh, it's
Yeah,
always
so
a girl.
Leonard stole his woman.
Hmm.
So when James was in his early 20s, he met Alma, ALMA, and she was kind and outgoing, the complete opposite of the only other woman in his life, his mama. So she was nurturing to him, kind, and she was outgoing, the opposite of his mom. So at that time, Alma and James were spending a lot of time together. However, they had a third wheel, Leonard Jr.
Uh-oh.
James felt Alma was quote unquote the one. He'd even told some of his people that at the bar that she was the one. But she couldn't make him any promises. Things were beginning to get serious, and Alma dropped the bomb. And she told James that Leonard had given her an ultimatum that she had to choose a brother.
Oh man.
I know, even in my notes, I have wait for Nyoka's comments.
This is like a soap. Like a
This
soap.
is
And
a 1950s drama.
yeah, this is crazy.
Yes. Yes. So
Oh.
Leonard gave her the ultimatum. So, of course, she chose Leonard. To James, this was the ultimate letdown and betrayal. She tried to downplay the relationship, tell him that we're just friends and we've always just been friends. We've never had anything more than friendship.
With benefits.
It kind of does hint that they were never romantically involved. If
Hmm.
yeah,
They
that
were
they
waiting
were.
for marriage.
Yes, it was the 50s.
Yep.
Oh,
True.
actually, it was probably along the 60s during this time. All right. So shortly after Alma, quote unquote, picked Leonard, they announced that they were going to get married. So James saw this as a knife in his back. The knife that was in his back had just been twisted. And Leonard asked him to be the best man.
Oh my gosh, no way.
I know, I can't
No
make this up.
way. He
Yes.
steals his girlfriend.
And
He's
asked,
marrying her, but he asked him to be his best
mm-hmm.
man.
So yeah, so it's already had the knife in his back, and now it just keeps getting twisted and twisted and twisted. And I'm assuming that he did. There was never any. I couldn't find any good concrete evidence that he was the best man in the wedding, but I think that he did go through with it. But as the years went on, Leonard Jr. and Alma assumed their happy married life while James sat across the table of the room each holiday, each birthday, and each gathering. He felt more and more robbed of a life. James felt that Leonard Jr. could have had any girl, but no, he stole his, the one who meant so
Man.
much to him. And now James was just a bystander in his life that could have been. So Alma and Leonard go on to have how many children do you think they have?
6,
Keep going.
7,
Keep going.
8,
Yep.
9.
8 children. They have 8.
Okay, this is so he's like, that this is even adding on to everything.
Oh, it gets better.
Oh man.
Yeah. So they go on to have 8 children together. Each pregnancy announcement was this knife again just being twisted a little bit more if it wasn't through his heart by now. So emotionally, his wounds were festering, right? And he was about to explode with envy and hatred. So that brings us up to Easter Sunday, March 30th, 1975. Charity, which is Billy Rupert, the mother, went to the local mass. She went home and she began to prepare the Easter meal for the family. The family gathered at Charity's house around 4 p.m. in Hamilton, Ohio. Charity organized the Easter egg hunt for her grandkids. By the way, she never had an Easter egg hunt for her own kids.
Mm, she's one of
Mm.
those.
So James set out, sorry, for the meal. The day before was his 41st birthday. and he had spent the night, imagine this, at the bar. So, as the family was finishing their meal, James walked into the living room and he had three loaded firearms, two handguns, and a rifle. Around 9:30 p.m., patrol officers received the call that someone had been shot at 635 Minor Avenue. The police were met by James at the front door of his mother's home there at Minor Avenue. The police described James as clean cut in a tidy shirt and pants, and James calmly told the police that someone inside had been shot.
Wow, that's pretty ballsy to stick around at the scene of the crime.
Someone. So the officers asked James some routine questions, as they would, and asked if anyone in this house needed help. James replied, "Nope, no one is alive."
Ooh.
So then the police pushed their way inside, of course, and all they saw was red. A red floor, a red couch, red walls, even red on the ceiling. The bodies were all over the home, and there were guns on the kitchen table. Police said that they had to count the bodies several times to make sure there were as many as there were, and in fact, the majority of them were the children, which made them even more heartbroken. 8 children and 3 adults were found deceased on the floor of the home. Leonard Jr., or Leonard III, who was 17, Michael, who was 16, Thomas, who was 15, Carol was 13, Anne was 12, David 11, Teresa 9, John 4, Alma, his old girlfriend, her sister-in-law at this point, and Leonard Jr., his brother, and the mother, Charity Rupert, all deceased. So police asked James if they should be on the lookout for another perpetrator. And James shook his head and said, "No." That's all I said. And he just remained calm and polite the entire time. Once at the police station, because they finally took him in, James was Mirandized and declined his right to counsel. Within 30 minutes, a prosecutor was there to speak to James. James agreed to talk as long as it didn't pertain to the circumstances surrounding the shooting.
Oh, will they say what order he did it?
I never found that, but that's a
No,
good
I
question.
was just wondering.
I think probably just as he walked through wherever there, I did, and when I sent you the email, there is the crime scene like photo, not photo, but drawing, because I don't know if you could see it
Oh,
probably because of my background, but it shows like a sketch of the home and where all the bodies were,
oh,
how they
okay.
how they numbered them is maybe how they came into the house and found them, but I'm not sure of the actual order of. I think
I
some
was
of the
just
young,
wondering because that anger was built up. I didn't know if he had a
mm,
particular order, but
I think some of the younger children were left last.
I would think so
I
because he would have to
think it
keep
was.
control of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious.
Good, no, good points. Good points. So they Mirandized him, and he declined his right to counsel. So within 30 minutes, the prosecutor was there, and of course, he wanted to talk about everything but why he was there. They asked what he did that day, and he told them he had been asleep until about 3 p.m. because he'd been drinking the night before. It was his birthday. He continued on that he heard his brother and family arrive about 4. He went on to explain that he had not left the house until the officers brought him to the police station. So he told them that he hadn't left the house. But he was questioned about the firearms on the table, and he affirmed that they belonged to him. He did deny any drug use, legal or illegal, but he did admit to drinking a lot of alcohol early into that morning. So the police finally asked him the names of the victims in the home, to which he was only able to name 8. And he became highly agitated when he couldn't remember the names of his younger nieces and nephews.
Hmm.
So yeah, so he mentally blocked them out at this point, I think. Like
Yeah.
after you have this knife in your back that your brother stole your woman and now they're having all these kids. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Yay, there's another one.
He checked out.
He totally checked out. So after they were asking him these and he became frustrated, he shut down. but after a few minutes, he decided to lawyer up.
Yeah, from all these like cases that has been covered, I have learned that you should just always ask for a representation,
Lawyer
whether
up.
you're guilty or not.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's just what I've noticed.
Concur. I concur. So after that, he was handed a phone book, and he found a familiar. This was so he could try to find an attorney. An attorney. I can't. An
An
attorney.
eternity.
Yeah, might have found that.
That's how
But
long it took to go through the phone book,
right. If you even know what a phone book is these days.
right? The kids today
So
don't
this
even know what that is.
today, kids, we used to have to actually get a book.
It was huge.
It was in alphabetical order. And people actually had phones inside their houses on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Did. There was no Google.
Yeah, there was no Google. And so you had to look up names. Luckily, though, I think there was the yellow pages where it did give lists of businesses. So that would have probably been easy to turn to L for lawyer and look up. So when he's doing this, flipping through the phone book, he comes across a name that looks and sounds familiar. Someone he had gone to school with. But when he called, the man declined because he didn't deal with criminal cases.
He's like, I'm a divorce attorney. What are you doing calling me? No,
right. 444.
Oh my God. Catchy, right? I mean, people remember that number.
I always said when I was little, I'm like, how many kids just pick up their parents' phone and call that? Because if you know the number 4, like wonder how many calls they got. Anyway, so he is given a name of a person, and I guess by like a police officer or someone at the police station. And he calls this person, and James said, I'm a suspect in a homicide. So remember, he's still just saying one. He's keeping everything singular, right? So homicide, singular. More like mass murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So still he's continuing that he's just killing, when he called the police, it was a person. So James was processed. They took his clothes, his shoes, that was all bagged, tagged, and put into evidence. The police took, back in those days, paraffin casts of his hands to test for gunshot residue. They scraped under all of his fingernails, but noticed there was only a small amount of blood splatter on his shoes. Although James had stated he was home all day and that the guns were his, he did not confess to any act of murder. Sadly, there was no clear evidence at this time that he was the lone shooter. I mean, in all fairness, if police are doing their job. So thankfully, the prosecutor did not want to take any chance that James would go free. And around midnight, they did end up charging him with 11 counts of aggravated murder. So they went back to the scene, and the scene was examined, and the bodies were removed from the home. Of course, local media had heard about it, and they staged themselves outside the home, but they didn't realize the extent of the situation. The media later referred to the scene as a quote-unquote parade of death. The sources said it took about 15 minutes for all of the bodies to be taken out of the home on gurneys. So you know how news stations listen to the police scanners and whatnot. So again, when he made that call, he said someone had been shot. So they go thinking one murder. So 15 minutes to get all the bodies out of the house. I know that doesn't sound like a long time, but when it's like rolling people out,
probably felt like forever.
Yeah, because I'm sure they had to find 11 vans, I guess at that time, corner vans or hearse or something to get them all out of there. It's not like they just piled them all in the back of the ambulance. That's not funny, but it's like you have to think about that. All right, so then the bodies were examined, of course, and discovered among them were 40 bullet wounds, but only 26 bullets were actually recovered from the bodies. The majority of the shots were lethal, which suggested that the suspect was a marksman who liked to target and practice target shooting. So only 2 of the victims had single fatal wounds. The others all had multiple, and there seemed to be no rhyme or reason for each victim's wounds. The 12-year-old Anne had 4 shots to her head. James's mother had a bullet right through her heart. Leonard Jr., his brother, had a fatal wound to his head, and Alma was only shot once, and it didn't say where. So the details of the rest of the victims is bizarre. And in the show notes, like I said, is a picture of the sketch of the bodies in the home.
Yeah, I'll be sure to post that.
James used hollow points. And as if you know, if you shoot guns, hollow points are made to expand upon impact.
Yep.
And it causes even more damage. The coroner determined that the time of death was between 6 and 7 p.m. for all the victims.
I wonder if he bought those bullets with his brother's money.
And, probably from a quote-unquote loan.
That's messed up.
The coroner determined that the deaths were between 6 and 7. When did he call the police?
9:30 p.m. I thought that sounded weird when dinner's still out and everything. Like, people aren't eating dinner at 9:30 for the most part, especially when people were more traditional back then.
So he probably had himself some leftovers. And the funeral for all the victims was held at the local mass, or at the local Catholic church. I forgot the name of it. And when the funeral was held, the caskets were arranged in the cross. So they had some caskets going across and some going down to form a cross out of the casket.
That is crazy.
More than 600 people attended the funeral, and James was declined the option to attend by a judge. So you may be asking these questions like I did. Okay, we talked about it. So if the time of death was around 7 at the latest, and James slept until 3, why was no one able to get away? Had he poisoned them? Did no one hear the gunshots?
Because there's so many gunshots.
There were 40 of them, right? Why did he wait so long to report the crime?
He had to shower and get cleaned up.
And so the detectives had some of these same questions. So the police asked around at the neighbors, and no one could find no one who had heard gunshots, not even an argument from within the home. So this baffled the police again, because again, there was a number of shots. Surely to goodness.
Do you have a silencer? I'm like into the movies right now. It's like, right. I'm thinking, I don't know.
So, surely to goodness, somebody had to hear something, right? So ballistics determined that a .22 caliber pistol was found at the scene, had been fired 26 times. So the killer had to reload his weapon 2 times during the episode. They discovered it had to go very quickly, and everyone was probably gone in less than 2 to 3 minutes, like a scene from the movies. So just to put this out there, over the years, many of James's job application listed under the hobbies was, you guessed it, pew-pews, the guns.
People put that on their
apparently
resumes?
I don't think it's a good idea nowadays, but maybe then, if like hunting and marksmanship.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you were going to be a police officer, like putting guns.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe your CIA snipers.
Yeah.
So James was at home, and he hadn't left the home. He admitted the weapons were his, but never came out and admitted to the murders. His fingerprints were on the barrel of the gun and on the trigger guard, as well as on the box of ammo, but they still couldn't prove it was him. The other 2 weapons at the scene were a 357 Magnum and a revolver, and neither had any fingerprints. So a few days later, somebody finally came forward, and it was the local antique shop owner, and he shed some light on the story. He also sold guns and ammo, and in the days before the shooting, he recalled a conversation with James about silencers.
Look at someone that, I was right.
Yeah. Well, someone else had told the police about a conversation with James, which included talks about shooting through a pillow to muffle the sound of a gunshot. So just a couple of days after the murder, a grand jury indicted James on 11 counts of murder. specifying it was a purposeful killing involving two or more persons. This meant he was eligible for the death penalty. And at the time in Ohio, it was the electric chair.
Ooh.
To go back on that really quick, though, it never said anything in the coroner report about finding fibers from a pillow on the victims, because
Oh.
usually if you fire through the pillow,
Yeah.
you're gonna find those fibers somewhere, or there's gonna be a. I guess they didn't look through the garbage. I don't know. All right, so he was eligible for the electric chair. A week later, James's attorney said James was paranoid and extremely depressed, and he asked that James be put on a 24-hour watch. James was then evaluated by a psychiatrist, and he did give some details about the deadly Easter evening. He claimed he went downstairs and everyone was finishing dinner. He was carrying his guns. He claimed he was going to go target shooting like he usually did. And as James walked through the living room, his brother asked him, "Do you think that rebate is going to help the economy?" So his brother was referring to a new tax credit that was going to be coming up on the tax returns. And James replied to his brother, "Not much." Then Leonard Jr., his brother, began to ask James about his car. James had a Volkswagen Beetle. It was a modest car, not luxurious, but it did what James needed it to do, and it got him back and forth, and James did what he could to keep it running. But in fact, in the last few years, it seemed to be having more trouble than not. James had suspected, but couldn't prove, that his brother had been sabotaging it in small ways to make it mostly an inconvenience. Not enough to need it replaced or have a major overhaul, but just enough to be annoying.
Hmm.
So when Leonard asked James about the car, it triggered James. He felt that Leonard often would make those kind of jabs in front of other people and in front of their mother so that James wouldn't react. But this was it, the icing on the cake, as they say. James was furious and didn't care who saw. And according to the psychiatrist, James used the gun and shot his brother point blank in the living room. So his brother was probably first.
Yeah.
His mother lunged at him but fell, and that's when he shot her. Then he turned the gun on Alma. He realized that he had killed all the adults, all the ones that made his life miserable. The children were all left, and James began to shoot them. James did state that the most of them died quickly, but some survived the initial wounds, so he went back and shot them again. James said he shot some of them several times to, quote unquote, end their moaning and put them out of their misery.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the psychiatrist diagnosed James as grossly psychotic and suffered from persecution complex and paranoia. And James felt he had probably been this way for 10 or more years. You think? So James had thought about ending his life after the murders, but couldn't bring himself to do it. And as you guessed it, the reason for the psychiatrist shared this information was so that they could enter a plea of guilty by reason of insanity.
Oh.
The psychiatrist felt that James was insane and unfit to stand trial. His professional opinion was that he should be held indefinitely at a psychiatric facility. The prosecutor didn't buy it. The detectives had talked to numerous people who knew James, and they all had the same thing, that he was a loner, he was kind of awkward, but otherwise he was pretty normal. Most people described him as nice, polite, never really made a scene, and he didn't stand out in any way. Another common denominator people mentioned about James is that he never went out with women. Alma was the only one.
That's because she was the one.
Right. I mean, one and done.
Right.
All right, so the prosecutor chose to go to trial and prove that James knew exactly what he was doing when he murdered his family in his mother's home. And James and his attorney still entered the plea not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity. It boils down to James said he didn't do it, but if he did, he was insane. That's kind of was their plea. So James was held without a bond in order to have another psych evaluation. So a month later was his competency trial. One diagnosis was signs of paranoia, psychotic state, and said that he may have caused by his spinal meningitis. The second expert stated that James was fit to stand trial even though he had paranoid personality. And a third expert said James was a loner and couldn't relate to people. He also agreed that James had a paranoid personality but with schizoid traits. And another expert even assessed James with paranoid psychosis, feelings of persecution, and out of touch with reality. But all could agree that James Rupert was fit to stand trial. So, in a twist, bum, 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 the defense did not call any of their own experts, not even the original psychiatrist.
What? Why?
I don't know. So, James wrote letters to people while he was in jail, and he stated he didn't trust his lawyers. He felt that they were conspiring and wanted him to take a deal and admit guilt admit guilt instead of fighting for him.
Oh, is this part of the crazy plan?
I think so. It doesn't work.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Right. We still have a couple more pages.
Oh, good.
Yes. So James wrote letters to these people in jail stating that he didn't trust his lawyers. So this made the lawyers argue that if James didn't trust them, he was unable to participate in his own defense and thus incompetent to stand trial. The judge ruled in favor of the prosecution, and James was competent because he understood what he was being charged with and why. So the trial of James Urban Rupert began on June 16th, 1975. Just a baby. And James had waived his right to a jury trial and took a three-judge panel. They all went to the scene of the crime before the trial began. The scene was preserved, so the judges saw the stained walls, all the rotten food.
Oh.
And everything was left the way it was that night. So that was in March, I think, wasn't it? And then this is June. So the only thing different was the house had been boarded up and now it was warm and humid. Yeah, because it was summertime, right?
Ew.
So they noticed the blood had seeped through the floor and was dripping into the basement. A forensic team had discovered fingernails in the walls. This backed James's claim that some of the children survived the initial shot trying to escape. That's just horrible. Can you imagine finding a fingerprint? I mean, if that's your job, but fingernails inside the wall.
Mm-mm.
So there were over 100 exhibits of physical evidence. The prosecution argued that James did it for money. He was broke. He only held dead-end jobs. He was an alcoholic. Apparently, Leonard had a substantial amount of life insurance. And I think I read in one of the things it was like $300,000. So that was a good amount in 75.
Right.
And James thought if everyone was dead, he would get his life insurance policy.
But they also wrong, buddy.
Dun, dun. Door closed. But they also argued about all of Leonard's other assets, which they argued James had knowledge of, and his financial status. They also argued that James's gun cases were still in his room, and that if he really had been planning on going target shooting, he would have taken the cases with him. Witnesses testified that when James did go to the shooting range, that he did take the guns in their proper cases and loaded them there on the site. Yay, witnesses.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So they had also found, buried in James' dresser drawer, his bloody clothing. They used this as an attempt to conceal. So books about paranoia and schizophrenia were also found in James's room.
Okay.
Turns out that if he was found not guilty by reason of insanity, he would be entitled to his mother and brother's estate. He thought it was a simple plan. His gunshot residue test was positive. The blood on his clothes was not his, but did not match several of the other victims. James's aunt was called to the stand. This is his mother's sister. She had gone to visit him in jail just after his arrest and asked him what happened. And James began to cry and say, "I don't know. The whole thing is a blur. It's blank." She claims mental illness on their side of the family, and she continued to support James. The defense moved for an acquittal for lack of evidence, but they they didn't prove that James was the shooter. The prosecution's rebuttal was, and the panel of judges unanimously decided that there was, in fact, significant evidence for the charge of aggravated murder, and the acquittal was denied.
Denied.
Yes. So the defense went on to portray him as mentally unstable, recounting the things that he went through as a child, the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, being locked up, so to speak, in a chicken coop, having to clean it. He even told his team his mom would make him sleep naked with her. Hmm.
Oh,
Like how I threw that in at the end.
yeah. Whoa.
Yes. There you go. So, as to all this was just par for the course, everything adding up in his life, he was a ticking time bomb. Decades of abuse, living in Leonard's shadow, his girl left him for his brother, and it all came to a blistering head. The hours he spent alone on the couch with the dead bodies, James says he was considering suicide, and he couldn't go through it because he was Catholic, and it was an immortal sin.
But killing wasn't.
Right. But funny, that's what I said. Funny to me that after he murdered 11 people, suicide is where he drew the line.
Yeah.
Right. So he also claimed the FBI had bugged his jail cell because his brother reported him as a communist.
Okay.
So his brother was dead. How could his brother report? That's what kind of what threw me off too. Like maybe before, I don't know. There was one final witness called to the prosecution stand. Her name is Wanda Bishop. She was the bartender, the barmaid at James's favorite bar, the 19th Hole. She said they met up several times a week. She didn't believe he was gay because he couldn't keep his hands off of her. However, she did admit they had never been intimate. She also claimed that they were in love. She was with him at the bar the night before the murders on his birthday, and James told her he needed to go home and sort out a problem.
Whoa.
Right. Wanda said it was in reference to all the money James owed his mother and brother. Apparently, his mom was going to kick him out. James left the bar, but he returned. Wanda asked if he had, quote, sorted it out, and James replied, not yet. This helped the prosecution show that James was planning to murder his mother, at least. So he also debunked James' statements that he had not been in a relationship since Alma. I would like to mention that during the trial, 91 witnesses testified. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Right. So after 4 hours of deliberation, the 3 judges reached a verdict. He was found guilty of all 11 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. In July of 1975, a mistrial was declared, and a second trial was rescheduled. At that trial, he was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences. So in 1982, James appealed and a new trial was granted again. And again, the defense was that James was insane. On July 23rd, 1982, another 3-judge panel found James guilty of 2 counts of first murder, his mother and his brother, but found him not guilty of the other 9 counts because of insanity. James received 1 life sentence for each guilty count. Between 1972 and 1976, the United States death penalty had been suspended under the U.S. Supreme Court decision. James couldn't be sentenced to death for their horrific crimes. So James was in the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution in Lima, Ohio. He was granted his first parole hearing in 1995, but was denied. His latest attempt at parole was in April of 2015, but he was also denied then. He was up for parole in 2025, so last year.
No way.
But he died of natural causes in 22.
Okay, I was like, dang.
He was 88 years old. All right. So Nayoka, these are questions to you. So what happened to the house? Because I can hear you saying this, right?
Yeah. What happened?
So after the 11 victims were buried in the Memorial Gardens Cemetery in Cincinnati, a year later, the house was sold on auction. New carpets were placed over the bloody ones. They were unable to tear off the bloody ones, so they just put new carpet over it. Isn't that nasty?
No.
That's what it said. I promise that's what it says. a family rented out the house and having no idea of all the horrific events that took place there. They moved out of the house after a short time, however. They reported that there were voices, strange noises, doors slamming, footsteps coming down the stairs, and lights turning on and off by themselves. They weren't the last family that had moved out quickly. A handful of other families moved in and out, all of them reporting unexplained sounds, voices, lights flickering, the whole nine.
I believe it.
The house was left abandoned for several years. The last family that was reported, nothing, no sounds, voices, or footsteps were coming down this time. It's like, I want to go see if it's still there.
Right.
All right. So this is kind of just like a listener care notice because I know this is kind of a topic of sensitivity sometimes.
Okay.
So some of the topics in this episode or discussed can be heavy for some people. So if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide or deep emotional distress, please know this: you're not alone. Your life has a purpose and value. Help is always available. If you're in the United States, you can call or text 988 to help reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's always confidential and it's always available 24/7. You can also chat at 988lifeline.org. If you're outside the U.S., visit findahelpline.com for resources in your country. If you are in immediate danger, please call 911 or go to your local emergency room. Reaching out for help is not a lack of faith or weakness. It's a step toward hope and healing. You matter, and there is help and hope ahead.
I love that you said that.
Yeah, I felt that needed to be said.
I think so too.
And I went to, a while back, I went to it's called a gatekeeper class. It's suicide awareness prevention type of thing. And they actually say test out the 988 system. Even if you're not, you can type test, TEST to 988 just to see how fast they reply back to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said do it. That's what they were there and being paid for.
I was in Florence, and in one of the parking lots, they had a sign with the 988 number and information. And I thought that was really cool because I've never noticed it before, or I think that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that, to be honest with you.
I think I was in Atlanta airport, and I think it was in the bathroom of the Atlanta airport, but I can't really recall, so I don't want to be lying. But it was somewhere in a big public restroom.
You guys should follow my friends Reaper Clean. They've been on this podcast before. I really need to get them back on. But they are a biohazard crime scene cleaners company based in California, and they are huge advocates for suicide prevention. And you should check out their Facebook and Instagram and follow them if you can. They have such good hearts. They're great people. And yeah, I love them.
Yeah, one of my families at school, they own Service Master here in Hebron. They do a lot of cleanup, water damage, smoke damage, but they also do crime scene cleanup.
Yeah, you don't just, cover it with something else. Like
Just put new carpet down.
Oh my gosh. People that do these cleaning for a living would be like, what are they doing?
Of course, it was the 70s too, so it was,
Well,
can you imagine
they're
though,
being haunted. You still have their body fluids in the house.
Can you imagine though going to buy this house and you're like, man, this house is really cheap. Let's, buy it, gut it, rent it out, whatever.
Yes.
And then that's, I don't know why I'm laughing, but you go to make your renovations and you're ripping up the floors and there's blood in the floor joists and in the insulation and whatnot.
Exactly.
I would be like, well, I would probably be all like, oh.
Be like, we got to sage the house. Get the sage out.
I'd come through with my anointing oil, but then I would also, the crime side of me would be like, oh, I wonder what happened here. And then, you know.
Yeah. Do a lot of research.
So
go down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Research your houses before you buy them, people.
Absolutely. Or you can just, roll the dice, see what happens.
Yeah. Or you can choose to live with the spirits and see what they got for you.
Thanks for covering this one.
No problem. Thanks for letting me.
And if you guys can't get enough of Operation Evil cases, and I know you can't, I know you want more,
Yeah.
consider supporting the podcast by joining Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout. When you join, not only will you have access to exclusive bonus episodes, but you will also get a shout out. And I can't remember if I shouted out the last person or not when I recorded, but thank you, Sarah, for joining. Operation Evil currently has 50 exclusive bonus episodes right now for you to binge on. The links can always be found in the show notes. And if you can't join, that's fine. Tell a friend, support our podcast by following us. Any of those things are really appreciative. And we do pay attention to all of the things. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, Heather, for coming back. We're going to hear a
Thanks
lot
for
more
having
from
me.
Heather. She's got her professional setup. And yeah, so that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.